This is Olivia. Though she has yet to greet the outside world, she has already completed an amazing journey. At fertilization, her gender, ethnicity, hair color, eye color, and countless traits are already determined. She begins to implant in the uterus about 1 week after fertilization. Her cells organize into what we call an embryo. At 3 weeks and 1 day, just 22 days after fertilization, Olivia's heartbeat can be detected. The buds of her arms and legs appear by 4 weeks. She begins to move between 5 and 6 weeks with both spontaneous and reflexive movements. At 6 weeks from fertilization, her brain activity can be recorded and bone formation begins. She can bring her hands together at 7.5 weeks, and separate fingers and toes emerge. She can also begin to hiccup. At the beginning of the 9th week, Olivia will have grown from a single cell into nearly 1 billion cells, and she is now called a fetus. She will suck her thumb and swallow, grasp an object, touch her face, sigh and stretch. At 11 weeks, she is playing in the womb, moving her body and exploring her environment. Her taste bud cells have matured by week 12 but are still scattered throughout her mouth. Her mother will first sense Olivia's movements between 14 and 18 weeks, an event called quickening. Beginning at 18 weeks, ultrasounds show speaking movements in her voice box. Around 20 weeks, with a lot of help, babies have survived outside the womb. At 27 weeks, her eyes are responding to light. She can recognize her parents' voices and will even recognize lullabies and stories. Olivia has gone on an amazing journey during these last 9 months. She will soon signal to her mother that it is time for delivery and greet the outside world.
So, if there's personhood at this point, why is it that we don't recognize the personhood of the baby in the womb? Just something to think about. We'll come back to that. The Born Alive Infants Protection Act of 2002. This was news to me. It passed with overwhelming bipartisan support, which means that the left of today is vastly different than the left of yesteryear, 2002. At least we had enough normal thinking. Now, they've always been wicked, but this is a new level of wickedness that we're dealing with now. That act passed with bipartisan support. House of Representatives, it passed by voice vote. The Senate passed by unanimous consent. And then it was signed into law August 5th, 2002 by then Republican President George W. Bush. So, while the Born Alive Infant Protections Act established the legal recognition of infants born alive, there were some deficiencies. It didn't include specific penalties for the healthcare providers who failed to offer medical care to these infants. And so in order to address this, the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act was introduced years later. Now, let me explain to you what this legislation aimed to propose. This legislation aimed to mandate that healthcare practitioners provide the same level of care to infants born alive after an attempted abortion as they would to any other newborn at the same gestational age. So they're saying, all right, these healthcare providers, if the baby is born alive after an attempted abortion, you need to render the same level of care to this baby as you would a baby born at the same gestational age that was wanted. Okay. It also indicated that he needed to require immediate transportation and admission of the infant to a hospital, impose criminal penalties, including fines and up to 5 years in prison for noncompliance, and allow the mother to bring a civil action against the noncompliant healthcare providers. So, what is different from this Survivors Act than the Born Alive Protections Act of 2002? Well, I'm going to tell you. And by the way, many of y'all didn't even know this was happening because this just happened a couple of years ago, 2023, during the Biden-Harris administration. So let me just give you the outcome of that. Despite multiple introductions, the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act faced significant opposition. In January of 2023, the House of Representatives, they passed the bill with a vote of 220 to 210. And that's where all the Republicans voted in favor, but all but one Democrat voted against it. What the heck's wrong with these people? I get it. You want to be a leftist. Fine. You don't have the human decency and the conscience to be like, well, if the baby is born alive, the least we can do after the abortion, if they survive, render aid. Those Democrats said, heck to the no, let it die. Let it die. Every single last one of those Democrats, except one, said, let it die. Don't render no aid. We don't need any sort of legislation like this. They showed you who they were. Furthermore, in the Senate, the bill failed to advance, receiving 52 votes in favor and 47 against. And this falls short of the 60 votes that you need to overcome a filibuster. Do you know what these nasty, evil Democrats had the nerve, the ones who opposed it from the Democrat Party? This was their argument. They argued that, well, this legislation's unnecessary, right? We've already have existing laws that protect newborns. I'm like, wait a minute, do we? Now, we do have some, but that's not the issue. This was a baby that survived an abortion. Their thing is, if you wanted an abortion and by God's grace, that baby happened to survive, nope, we still got to go through it and kill it when it's out the womb. Don't render no aid. Just let it sit on the cold little isolate and let it die. Just let it die. These evil, wicked people, they even tried to say, well, this bill, it could possibly interfere with the medical professional's judgment and cause potential criminal legalities and impact the standard medical practices. I'm like, really? So you guys, these are your people. If you're a Democrat, these are your people, and you're gonna own this today. Your people over 100-some years ago said, well, Dred Scott wasn't a person. And now they like, your baby isn't a person either. But here's the kicker. These demons know better. Oh, they know better. And I'm going to prove exactly how they know better. Let's enter to my right and y'all's left, probably. Enter stage right. Y'all remember Laci Peterson? Type a 1 in the chat if you remember the case, if you're old enough to remember Laci Peterson. If you're like a young millennial or a Gen Z, or you like, who, I don't know her. If you're a Gen X or above, you definitely know or remember Laci Peterson. I'm about to expose this hypocrisy today. Let me familiarize you with the case. 2002. Look at that. Look at that. 2002. Is that the same year that the Born Alive Infants Protection Act was passed with bipartisan support? It sure was. Oh, wow. That's what an amazing little detail. In 2002, Scott Peterson was charged with the double homicide of his pregnant wife, Laci Peterson, and their unborn son, Connor. Let me show you guys. That's Laci. Y'all, Laci's picture is forever cemented in my mind because I remember I was like, oh my gosh, she is so gorgeous, so pretty. Why would her husband do this? And she's pregnant with his child. What the heck was going on? So we're going to leave that picture right there just to cement in your mind. This is real. This actually happened. This was a huge case that had national eyes on it. The husband right there, Scott Peterson, Scott was convicted on both counts, meaning murder of his wife and his unborn son, Connor. Unborn means Connor's in the womb. You guys, he's in utero where he's supposed to be until his time had come. Scott's convicted on both counts. And guess where the conviction happened? California. California law recognized that Connor, a baby still in the womb, recognized Connor as a full person under the law. I said, well, wait a minute. How anybody out there, help me understand how under California law, Connor's personhood as this unborn baby in the womb is recognized. And in one courtroom, an unborn baby he's a murder victim, right? But in another, he's a disposable clump of cells. I said, well, would you look at this? Isn't that something? The Democrats will demand justice for Connor Peterson, but won't bat an eye at Planned Parenthood killing a whole bunch of babies the same age. When it's convenient for their narrative, suddenly the unborn baby, oh, it's a human again. It just depends on how it benefits them. This is the inconsistency that I wanted to highlight. And the reason why I'm so passionate about this topic, because the more I read and the more I learn the truth, not the reimagined, whitewashed, sanitized history of the Democrats. But when I actually look through history and I start using this up here and I start thinking and comparing things, I'm like, here's the inconsistency. Dred Scott was a Black man and he was denied personhood. Democrats, racist Democrats denied Dred Scott personhood. Roe v. Wade, babies in the womb, denied personhood. Laci Peterson's case, personhood of the unborn was affirmed, but only because it suited the prosecution. Do y'all want to talk about the moral schizophrenia here? If you want to talk about moral schizophrenia, this is it. This is it right here. The left, y'all, because they are so godless and evil, and they are such a bunch of perverts, liars, psychopaths, and anti-Christian bigots, they will recognize the personhood when it serves their agenda. But then they'll deny it if it interferes with their bloodlust. Tell me where I'm lying. You boy, girl, listen. Y'all better type a 1 in the chat if you like. Where's the lie? What are we going to do with this information? Is life not sacred from the womb or no? Is the Bible silent on this or no? If you are a Christian and you keep identifying with this godless party, something's inconsistent and you have a decision to make. So in case you need to be reminded, let's just quickly go over the biblical view of life and how the Imago Dei has value. Genesis 1:27. So God created man in his own image. In his own image, he created them. Y'all, life is sacred, born and unborn. I don't care about the age of gestation or the location of said person. It does not change this fact. This is a self-evident truth. It's just true on its own face value. You don't have to like it. You can keep suppressing the truth in your unrighteousness and lying all day long. It's a clump of cells. It's not a baby. And, it's a parasite. It needs the mama. We've heard all the arguments. Connor was a baby in his mama's womb, but because it benefited the left and the prosecution of Scott Peterson, we must protect this unborn baby. What? It was kind of a person, because if Connor was a person, we're in a conundrum now. Oh, we're in a serious conundrum, and we need to settle this matter. Another scripture, Psalm 139, 13 through 16. You knitted me together in my mother's womb. Y'all, God doesn't wait until birth to recognize life. Just like we can't allow pregnant mothers to decide when a life is a life based on whether she wants to keep it or not. Right? Like when you want the baby shower and you want to do the gender reveal, oh, it's the baby. But if the baby daddy ain't acting right and you just like, I don't have enough money to take care of this baby. Now all of a sudden you don't want it. Now it's no longer a baby. Is that what we doing? This is the schizophrenic hypocrisy that we need to discuss. Hands that shed innocent blood. We have Proverbs 6:17. That's an abomination to the Lord. And I'm not on a high horse. If you know my story, you know darn Skippy ain't on a high horse. We're going to get to the redemption and the hope that's available in Christ. But before we get to that good news, we got to deal with this bad news. The unborn aren't just tissue.